On September 27th, 2024, Josh set out right after work to spend the weekend camping at a place he had been wanting to camp for some time. However, due to strange events during the video that made him feel uncomfortable and scared, he had to abort the camp later on. Josh has been making videos about camping and outdoor survival on his YouTube channel for several years. Accordingly, he is well prepared for the evening in the forest, even if it's raining and foggy. The video starts with him on his way to the forest where he wants to set up camp. As soon as he enters the forest, Josh is greeted by a white cloth with dots painted on it hanging over a tree trunk, which looks like a ghostly figure.
You guys gonna think I planned this? I didn't. I think Halloween's coming up, isn't it? Well then.
Though confused but rather amused, Josh moves on after a few minutes and finds the spot for his camp a short time later. Just before he's about to set up camp, however, he hears noises next to him that sound as if branches are breaking.
Let's get back into it, Josh. Get that tarp up and get some food on the go.
You can already see that he seems a little distracted and unsettled. He seems to be looking into the bushes next to the camera the whole time, but tries to play it off and starts working on his camp. Meanwhile, in the video, it seems as if strange noises are coming from near him. Sometime later, Josh decides to take a closer look at the bushes after he hears stronger noises coming from there. In the meantime, he seems much more insecure and distracted as he tells his story. Nevertheless, he tries to carry on and is relatively sure that at least he couldn't see or hear anyone else talking near him and that he should be alone in the forest. As Josh sits quietly in front of his firewood and is busy starting his fire, loud footsteps and breaking branches can be heard directly behind his camp.
I'm finding it really difficult. Do you know what I mean? You heard that.
By now, completely distracted by the noises, which made him even more unsettled as he can't locate the source of the noises, he looks around again. At this point, the forest has become much quieter. Although birds could be heard earlier, their sounds have now disappeared. Josh is also struggling to decide whether to leave the camp immediately or stay and start the fire, but the persistent noises around him make him decide to leave.
Yeah, I'm gonna pack up. I guess I could take this tarp away, but I just don't really want to. Alright, I'm gonna go, guys.
As he was about to disappear, you can suddenly hear a dog barking behind him.
And cook some food. My missus made a nice There's a dog behind me. Maybe it was a dog this whole time. It's a big... Right.
A few days later, still in the same video, he explains the situation again. As Josh was collecting the firewood, the bird noises and his surroundings became very quiet. At this point, however, he heard heavy footsteps and noises from the nearby bushes. He describes it as if he was surrounded by these noises at one point. Josh has been camping for years and knows the sounds that are usually present in the woods, but this time it wasn't ordinary sounds. Finally, he explains that he could see silhouettes in the bushes at dusk, so he decided to pack up and leave. My guess is that the barking could indicate that a curious person was walking their dog and watching him for a long time. A lone dog was out in the woods, or a mix of a stalker and his dog. Of course, he may have imagined the sounds due to the rain, and the dog's barking was just a coincidence of a random dog later on. But it is often people and not animals that scare you the most in the middle of nature. But when you look at an experienced man like Josh, who looks around with incredible anxiety and has to reassure himself, The best thing he could have done was to get out of the forest that day. Matt from the YouTube channel Field Days is an Australian YouTuber who mainly makes outdoor survival videos. He is usually alone in nature and tries to survive with little equipment and completely on his own. On October 3rd, 2021, however, he decided to try something different. In the Australian outback, abandoned somewhere in the middle of nowhere, he visits a supposedly haunted cave alone, which he was told about by a friend who had also visited the cave. His overall goal is to spend the night there. He spends the first part of the video wandering through the outback for several hours during the day, looking for the cave until he finally finds it. The cave has a rustic metal ladder, which makes a loud noise when used, but you must use it to get into the cave. Once in the cave, his first realization is that it is completely silent. He then explores the cave, but there's no way deeper into the cave as possible paths that could be climbed into, and in a passage that is too narrow and pointy for humans. After exploring the cave, he tells us that he feels uncomfortable and like he's being watched. The same experience that his friend had in this cave. Nevertheless, he tries to distract himself with other thoughts. A few hours later, he reports that he has heard strange noises in the meantime, including what sounded like a ladder swinging. Shortly afterwards, he decided to eat something, when suddenly more noises appear and interrupt him.
That is beautiful. Baked beans in a haunted cave. Oh my fucking God. That was the sound. That is the sound. Did you hear that? Look at my arms. I got full goosebumps. Now, you can't move that chain with wind. It's way too heavy. There is no wind coming in here. There's no wind even forecast. Holy shit. Oh my fucking God. You must have heard that just then. Look at my arms, dude. Oh, this is fucked.
Visibly frightened by the noises, he doesn't know what to do. The noises are coming from the ladder at the entrance area to the cave. In addition, a stone fell from the direction of the ladder and rolled a little until it stopped. 2 hours later, at 2 o'clock in the morning, there are more noises that have visibly frightened him, and this time bats are flying wildly around in the cave.
So this is the ladder that was making the sounds. Now you're trying to tell me that this big ladder, something has to move this. And it has to move it because a rock fell and rolled all the way down here somewhere. So something was moving this chain 3 times in a row. I got no idea what it could have been. Can't be the bats. So these bats are active. They're everywhere, but they're too small. I don't know. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave this cave. I want to stay here and do the whole night, but that noise was just scary.
Visibly unsettled, he tries to find a logical explanation for the noises, but is unable to come up with one. He was also on the verge of leaving the cave, but regained his composure and actually stayed in the cave until the morning. Maybe there happened to be another outdoor YouTuber who got the same idea to investigate the same cave at night, and Matt's voice scared him into leaving. At least that's what one commenter jokes about in the comment section below the video. According to Matt, there is a car park nearby, but when he arrived at the cave as well as when he left the cave, there was no one around. The sound, however, was too short for someone to use the ladder for any length of time, and you should be able to hear a person approaching the cave somehow, if that's actually the case. Since the sound appeared at different times during the night, it makes no sense that it was a person. According to Matt, it was windless in the cave itself, and even if it was the wind, it couldn't move the ladder to the point where it starts making sounds. I personally think it might have been an animal that was traveling in the Australian outback and maybe wanted to get into the cave. When it tried to use the ladder or simply test it, it might have gotten scared and run away frantically, causing a stone to fall. Matt uploaded more videos as usual and has not returned to the cave ever since. But what or who caused the noise remains unclear. Normally, Tom takes us on his rather quiet and relaxed adventures camping in the countryside, and this video starts in exactly the same style. On August 3rd, 2024, Tom decides to go camping in a small wood somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the UK, accompanied by his four-legged friend Archie. At sunset in a beautiful mood, they both walk towards the woodland. We see Archie running around full of energy and joy, and Tom is also happy and excited about camping. And even when they enter the forest, the mood seems to be the same. But after a short time and now a little deeper into the forest, the mood begins to change. Tom starts to feel more and more uncomfortable the further he goes into the forest. Archie also becomes quieter and more tense over time. Tom himself says that it feels as if he is or is going somewhere that he shouldn't be. Meanwhile, it gets much quieter in the forest, but for now he tries to suppress these thoughts. Eventually, he finds a place to set up camp, still tense and with the feeling that something is wrong. When he sits down, however, both Tom and Archie freeze and something strange can be heard.
This dog's tail, he keeps looking over there. His tail.
Although Archie had been running around happily before, he became unusually quiet and seemed to be staring around in alarm. In between, you could hear branches cracking from the bushes and the area became completely silent, although you could hear various birds chirping before. The whole situation got on Tom's nerves so much that he decided to cancel the camp. Visibly frightened, he leaves the forest. Towards the exit of the forest, the uneasy feeling disappears and the bird noises increase again. Next to the forest entrance, however, he decides to continue his camp for the time being and repeats what he has experienced in his own words. He mentions that he has never seen Archie staring at an area while visually nothing could be perceived there. A short time later, Tom gets the same uneasy feeling again and decides to return to his car and abort the camp completely. But before he can drive off, this happens.
I feel that I've made the right choice. What the fuck was that? You won't have heard that because I've got my mic on me.
You suddenly hear several muffled screams from exactly the same direction as the woodland and lots of crows screaming at the same time. To me, it sounds most like a moose, but they don't exist in the UK and whatever it was, it doesn't match the location from which you can hear it and you can't really assign it to any other animal either. At least not one that should be in such a small forest. Archie's earlier behavior in the forest, standing there completely still and staring into the bushes in alarm, is also a clear indication of something that has been there. Today, Tom is devoting himself to other places and topics. After that evening, Tom went back to the forest several more times and continued to have strange encounters and noises, but nothing like that scream happened again. Brandon Explores is known for his videos in which he travels to different places in his camper van and camps there. He usually takes us with him as he travels through nature or cities during the day and then sleeps in his van in complete peace and quiet in the evening. On March 17th, 2025, however, things should look a little different. At the beginning, we follow Brandon as he does everyday things in his van and in the city center of the town he is in at the time. As he hasn't been to the place often, he has to look up some camping spots in the countryside on the internet that he can go to with his camper. However, the original campsite turns out to be unsuitable, and so he must look for an alternative place which he only arrives at in dark. The pictures also show that it is a nice and quiet place during the day where other campers also come to. When he arrives, however, it is raining and he's the only camper in the place. After deciding to stay there, he prepares for the evening and makes himself something to eat. A short time later, however, his peace and quiet is disturbed by a car.
Just parked up looking at us, and somebody is coming towards the van with a head torch on. Someone's at the back of the van. What the hell is this person doing? He's just sat there. The headlights shine at the van.
For some reason, a car is parked at the campsite with its headlights pointed at Brandon's camper van. At this point, there is no reason why a normal person would drive to a campsite in the middle of nowhere during bad weather. Shortly after, another car shows up and you can see people walking around outside. It looks like they're looking at Brandon's direction and talking about something. But that's not all.
Someone else has bloody pulled in now. Why are they coming that close? This is weird. We've got another one turning up. What the hell?
After half a dozen more cars appear out of nowhere and seem to be doing their rounds on the campsite, shining around with flashlights, it becomes too much for Brandon. Although he had placed camper ramps in front of the tires, which he had to collect before he left, he was not disturbed by any of the people and was able to drive away without any further problems. Brandon appears to be visibly tense the whole time. Maybe Brandon was just unlucky and there was a tuning meetup at that evening, as the cars looked a bit more special than usual. Or maybe it was another meetup, although that doesn't really make sense to me. Normally, you do this in a lighted environment, and usually you have enough other public places in the evening or at night where it makes more sense to do something instead of a dark campsite in the middle of nowhere. There was also a suggestion in the comments as to whether a dogging meeting was being held at the location. Dogging, in this case, stands for a kind of exhibitionism. This is certainly realistic, but what is the likelihood of it happening on this particular night and in this particular place? It should be noted that there is no large town in the area and there are certainly other similar places nearby. What exactly they were up to, or whether Brandon was perhaps even a thorn in their side that evening, is unclear. But one thing is clear: they didn't look like normal campers. We usually follow Emily and Louise on their Camper Vibe channel as they convert old cabins or travel together in their van and discover adventures in different places. In the video from January 4th, 2023, Louise decided to camp alone in a notorious haunted forest in Pluckley, near London. The area is said to be rife with ghostly encounters and nightly screams. Louise seems unperturbed by this, as she is a nature photographer and camper and is used to the outdoors, and her outdoor experience quickly becomes apparent as she sets up camp. And so she spends 48 hours in the forest during the course of the video. However, the first night was not as peaceful as she had planned. As Louise goes about her evening routine and is about to eat, she listens to some noises in the area.
Sounds like kids screaming. That's just a train. Is it a bird or is it kids screaming? That's a bird. That's a gunshot.
In addition to a train in the distance or some birds, you can also hear gunshots and children's screams as Louise herself puzzles over. Maybe it was other birds, or maybe it was the alleged screams that can be heard from the surrounding area, according to some articles. Visibly confused but not really unsettled, Louise continues eating and starts her campfire. But later at 2 a.m, her emotional state changes after strange noises can be heard next to her.
I don't want to turn the light on because I'm pretty convinced there's been a person or persons. What the fuck? I've never wanted the morning to come as much as I do right now.
In the middle of the night, you hear footsteps right next to her. You would think that a curious animal has come over to her camp, which is not unlikely in a forest, but the footsteps sound too human for that. Over the next few hours, Louise hears more noises, including breaking branches and more footsteps, but when she checks away later, no one is there. At the same time, something has woken up some crows, which fly overhead, cawing. 6 a.m. is the last time she hears strange noises, but then she stops filming and wakes up normally in the morning. The following day, evening and night, nothing unusual happens and she has a very harmonious remaining time in the video. Although Louise has a lot of experience and has no problem camping alone, the first night was the scariest she has ever had in her life.